If you feel this part somewhat vague by what we have proved above means what? You can do one thing. This second part of the proof you can start in a separate paragraph. Then you can write by what we have proved in the previous paragraph. That will be much better. That will sound better. By what we have proved above. So again here what do we have? You have here u plays the role of y. A is A and w dot A is B, and the solution is y is equal to BA inverse. So we have u is equal to w dot A inverse. Is equal to W, and this completes the proof. Okay, so we have proved the second lemma in its entirety. Now we can go to the exercises. So let us start. Now we can wrap everything up. Exercise 1. In the following determine whether the systems described are groups. What more, if they are not, point out which of the group axioms fail to hold. Okay, so what are the systems? In the first part, G is set of all integers. And A dot B is defined to be equal to A minus B, where you have to understand that A and B are considered to be coming from G, and this is the operation that we have in G. B. G is the set of positive integers, set of all positive integers, and A dot B is AB, the usual product of integers. C. Okay, here G is this set of 7 symbols A6, where Now, okay, let me write here. We'll take some space where ai dot aj is defined to be equal to ai plus j if I plus j is strictly less than 7 and ai plus j minus 7 if I plus j is greater than or equal to 7. And an example is also given. For instance, a4 dot a5 is equal to a4 plus 5 minus 7, which is 9 minus 7, that is 2, is equal to a2, since four plus 5 is 9, which is greater than 7. So this is part C, and there is one more, part D. G is the set of, okay, the author is not using the, it sounds somewhat peculiar, but anyway, set of all rational numbers with odd denominators. Right, and what is the operation? A dot B is just A plus B, the usual addition of rational numbers. Okay, so this is the first exercise. We have to verify in each case whether the system is whether the set forms a group under the operation given, and if that is not the case, we have to point out which of the axioms are not satisfied. Okay, so we start off the solution with part A. So here we have the set of all integers and the operation is subtraction, and I would like to, okay, that what I was trying to say is that I am going to draw some references from Terence Tao as usual. That however will not appear in part A. G is closed under the operation dot. Actually, if we want, we can say that that is coming from the fact that the difference of two integers is again an integer, and that fact itself needs a proof, which we will prove in Terence Tao's analysis 1. But since that is something we are familiar with and we have seen that, we have used that throughout our mathematical life so far, so let us not just mention that simple fact here. We just know this is true, and as a consequence G is closed under the operation dot, which is subtraction. The operation, however, is not associative. although closure property is true but associativity fails. And this is the reason 1 minus 1 minus 2 is not equal to 1 minus 1 minus 2. Why? What about the left hand side? This is 0, so the left hand side is minus 2. Here this is minus 1, minus of minus 1 becomes plus 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 is not equal to minus 2. So these two things are not equal, and hence the operation is not associative. Since the equations a minus 1 equal to a equal to 1 minus a have no solution in G, G lacks an identity element. Okay, what is going on here? Why are suddenly these equations appearing? You see, if there is an identity element, and I am assuming that the identity is A, then A dot anything should be equal to that thing that thing dot A, where A is playing the role of the identity, and this should be true for every B, for all B in G. Now in particular, in place of B we can take 1, so we should then have A dot 1 is equal to 1 dot A. But looking at the definition of this operation dot, this just translates into this. Now the question is, there is no integer A for which these equations are true, these equations are satisfied. Why? Because you see, if you take the first part, the first equation, from that you get A is equal to 2. Okay. Now if you substitute that value here in the second equation, then you get 1 is equal to 1 minus 2, which is equal to minus 1, and this is nonsense, this is not true. So that's why this equation has no solution, so there is no A which will act as an identity element in G. So G not only does not have associative law true in it, but it lacks identity element also. And without identity element, of course, inverse, no question of inverse. So there is no inverse also. And we are going to mention that like this. Without an identity element, elements of G or not like this, not elements of G, existence of inverses or lack thereof of elements of G does not make sense. If there is no identity, how can you ask whether there is the inverse or not? Because in the definition of an inverse, identity element has to be there. Okay, so in the first system, only the closure property is true. The other three are false. The other three are not there, and the last one, inverses, that does not make sense. Okay, then we come to B. What was B? Set of all positive integers, and the operation is product of integers. Okay, G is closed under the operation is associative and one belonging to G acts as an identity. Acts as an identity element. And these facts follow from some place, and we are going to write the references. See definition. Although these are some facts which we have taken for granted in many places, but still, as mathematical facts, they need proof, and proofs are there, and these are the places where you will get proofs. And proposition 235 from Gauss analysis 1. There you will actually see the proof that if you multiply two positive integers, then the result is again a positive integer. Multiplication of positive integers is associative, and 1 acts as an identity element, because 1 times any positive integer, or any positive integer times 1 is that positive integer itself. Do you notice one small thing here? I have written an identity, not the identity. It's because we are trying to see whether G is a group or not. Unless G is a group, uniqueness of identity is not guaranteed. Okay, so we don't yet know whether G is a group or not, so that's why we are writing an identity. However, the fourth condition, existence of inverses, fails. The integer two does not have an inverse in G. This is because 2 times A is always greater than 1 for every positive integer, that is for every A in G. It will never be equal to 1, and this also has a proof. I mean, it also follows from somewhere. We are going to mention that, so that there is no gap in our study. C. Proposition 236 hence G is not a group. Okay, so the second one is also not a group, but it only the fourth condition fails. The other three are there. Then we come to C. Looking at the way the operation of in C is given, you can see that it has a striking resemblance to example 2 to 4, where we came across the finite cyclic group of degree n, and we are going to use that fact here. If we introduce a new symbol A7 for the element A0, that is, if we define A7 equal to A0, you may think why A0 is already there, why do we need to create another symbol? It's like some person already has a name, you give that person another name. Okay, that these two symbols mean after all mean the same thing, but there is a purpose for doing this, and the purpose is this: once we do this, then one can see that this again needs to be written somewhere else because I need space. One can see this ai dot aj is equal to ai plus j if originally what we had is this: I plus j is less than 7, but now because of this new thing, new introduction of a new symbol, we can write like this, and I plus j minus 7 if I plus j is greater than 7. Because of this introduction, we have been able to transfer the equality condition from this place to that place. I leave it to you to see that this one is actually true and it follows from the given definition, where we have less than or equal to 7 and we originally had less than or equal to 7 or no, this is not the question, sorry, this is not the question, this is the question. We originally had less than 7 and here greater than or equal to 7. We have been able to change it like this. You try to make sense of this thing, that this is actually true and this can be done. We are not going to write anything else about it. This is true and this can be done, and this has been done. Now what is the advantage of this? What do we achieve from this? For all ai and aj belonging to G, the advantage now is that this operation, which is actually nothing but the given operation just represented in some slightly different way, matches exactly with the operation that we have come across in example 224, where in place of ai you had a to the power I. This is also a symbol, this is also a symbol, where the position where I occurs actually does not matter, because if you look at the operations, this operation and the one in example 224, you will see the striking resemblance. Everything just depends on this condition, what I plus j ultimately turns out to be. And note that there we had this. Okay, let me write it for you. In example 224, we had the operation defined for us like this: a to the power I plus j. If I plus j is less than or equal to 7 and a to the power I plus j minus 7, actually we did not have just 7 there, we had n. If I plus j is greater than n. Do you recall we actually put a lot of effort in proving that this operation is associative? There we proved that the system is a group in that example. So you see that here we are just writing suffixes in place of superfixes. Everything else is identical. So that's why this system will also form a group, and we are going to make use of this resemblance to just mention that this will also form a group just like this one. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. So let us see how we can write the language. Okay, now looking at example 224, one can see that G is a group, just like that. And if that sounds a little too brief, we can write something else in bracket. It's just like within quotes, the group in example 224, or in other words, they are similar. Do you remember that concept of similarity between two groups, which we said at the time of introducing this similarity? In fact, in this example itself, we gave a geometric interpretation of this group as a group of rotations, some operations, rotations of unit circle. So they are similar in that same sense. This group and the one in example, the cyclic group in example 224, are similar, and because of that similarity, which is evident from this binary operation, this system is a group. So in parts A and B we don't have the systems as groups. In part C we have groups. In example 224, oh, I forgot to mention, wait, there we had n when n is equal to 7. Then we write the groups are similar. I am consciously avoiding the term isomorphic because that will come later on. And finally, part D, and here the author has made a slight mistake. The set G as given is not well defined. Why? What is G? According to the author, G is the set of those rational, is it just rational or positive rational? Rational numbers that have odd denominator. Okay, so let us take an example. Suppose you consider the rational number 2, which is after all an integer, but still integers are also rational numbers. Now, what about its denominator? I can write 2 like this, 2 divided by 1. So 1 is an odd integer. So according to our definition, this should belong to G. But at the same time, we can also write 2 like this, 4 divided by 2. And these two are equal. Here the denominator is even. So according to this representation, our original number should not be in G. So what is going on? What is the problem with this definition? The problem is that he says, Herstein says that those rational numbers which have odd denominator, if you are given a rational number, its numerator and denominator are not uniquely defined numbers. A rational number can have infinitely many numerators and infinitely many denominators. So then what is the workaround? How can we, you clearly see that the way this G has been defined, this does not make sense. You will not be able to say for sure whether 2 belongs to G or not in the form in which G is given. So we have to slightly modify the definition, and that we will do like this. We rectify, if you want you can keep that example to show that G in this form is not well defined. We rectify the definition of G as follows. Let G be the set of those rational numbers that have at least one representation as a quotient of 2 integers where the denominator is odd. See the difference. Here we are defining G to be the set of those rational numbers which have, we know that a rational number has many representations or as quotients of integers. We need at least one representation in which the denominator is an odd integer. If that number fails to have such a thing, then it will not belong to G. What is an example of a number in G? This is an example. You see, now we can decide whether 2 belongs to G or not. Yes, 2 belongs to G. 2 can be written as 2 by 1. It can also be written as 4 by 2. But since there is at least one representation as a quotient of two integers where the denominator is odd, so that's why 2 will belong to G. However, 3 by 2 will not belong to G. No matter what you do, you cannot make this rational number, or you cannot write this rational number as a quotient of two integers where the denominator is odd. You cannot get rid of these two. So that's why this does not belong to G. This belongs to G. So now the definition of G is well defined, and G is actually a set. This, however, is not even a set. Okay, now we can proceed to see whether it's a group. This will turn out to be a group. Okay, so now for integers m1, n1, m2 and n2 belonging to J, which denotes the set of integers, with n1 and n2 odd, we have, okay, so if n1 and n2 are odd and m1 and m2 are any integers,